Hello, I'm Michael Hainsworth. The C.D. Howe Institute's grading of fiscal accountability for Canada's cities reads a lot like the report cards I got in high school. Could do better. But unlike me, cities can't skate by on their good looks and charming personality. The budget municipalities present at the start of the year and the audited financial statements that come at the end are crucial for decision-making and accountability. This is Bill Robson, President and CEO of the C.D. Howe Institute. He, alongside Research Officer Nicholas Dahir, say governments should present financial information that's transparent, useful, and timely. But many of the 32 major municipalities do not.
When people look at a city budget and they don't understand it, one of the most important messages we have for them is, it's not you, it's them. You should be able to understand it, and they should give you something you can understand.
For us to be able to hold them to account, we need to understand the numbers. And for them to make informed decisions that benefit all of us, they need to understand the numbers.
Bill and Nicholas join us now. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.
Bill, you've been scoring Canada's biggest cities on what they promise to spend and what they actually deliver since 2011. Are the scores getting any better?
The scores are getting better. It's a very slow, arduous, sort of teeth-pulling-like process because the response of so many cities when we point out that their budgets are such a mess and so hard for people to understand is to sort of imply that what they're doing is, as it always has been, very wise, very appropriate, and that the people who don't understand it simply don't understand what's going on. But when we say could do better, I know it's a report card cliche, but it would be so straightforward for cities to do better, because at the end of the year, when they publish their financial statements, they nearly always get clean audits. The presentations are so clean and so straightforward. Everything is on one page, all the revenues, all the expenses, what happened on the bottom line, typically a surprisingly large surplus. And there is no reason why they couldn't present their budgets the same way. So it's frustrating that it's taking so long, but we are seeing progress. More cities are now showing the appropriate numbers in their budget. So we're very pleased about that.
So, Nick, how do the letter grades work?
Well, our scorecard examines a variety of criteria that we judge as being important for a non-expert, someone who's not an expert in accounting, in understanding what their city's budget and financial statements tell them. So we look at things that enable access to the information in there. We ask, are the key numbers up front? Are they on one page? Do the numbers in the budget match the accounting? Is the same accounting standards that are presented in the year-end financial statements, or are they presenting apples at the start of the year and oranges at the end of the year? We also ask, do the numbers in the budgets and financial statements provide context? And in the budgets, we ask, do the budget projections appear alongside projections from the previous year? And in the financial statements, we ask, do the results appear alongside what the projections for what the projections were at the start of the year, and are they consistent, or have they been restated? We also ask, were they on time? The fiscal year runs from January 1st to December 31st, and so budgets that appear after the fiscal year began are a big problem. We also assess the timeliness of the financial statements. If they're released too late after the financial year has ended, there's a risk that they become old news and that they aren't informing the public and city councillors who are stewards of the public funds.
Which is ultimately the transparency component to this. Not only do you want to make sure that the numbers work, but that they're ultimately understandable. So Bill, let's talk about who's at the top of the class. Why did Richmond, BC rate an A?
Well, Richmond did what other cities could do. If you, Michael, were trying to improve your grades in high school, it'd be pretty straightforward for us to say how to get a better grade. In the case of Richmond, they are presenting numbers in the budget that do match what is in the financial statements. And it seems like such a straightforward thing. It feels odd to be commenting that cities aren't doing this. But I'll just give an example from another level of government to show how simple this could be. If you look at I'll pick Ontario, and it's not uniquely good, but it's very straightforward in the Ontario budget. They show you on one page all of the revenues that they're planning to raise, all of the expenses that they're going to incur, what they're expecting on the bottom line. And for an MPP in the case of Ontario, that tells you very straightforwardly, going back to what Nicholas referred to earlier, is the capacity of the government going to get better or worse in terms of its ability to deliver services? So in the case of Richmond, you're seeing a city government that is doing the same thing. And if all the cities were to simply do the work that they do at the end of the year when they calculate their budgets on the same accounting basis that they use in their financial statements, and give us that information at the beginning of the year, so that they're showing, how much are property taxes going to go up compared to last year? How much are we going to spend on policing compared to last year? What are the totals for revenue and expense? They could all get A's, or they could certainly get B pluses, as Richmond is doing.
Ottawa, Quebec City, Vancouver, not too far behind either?
Yeah, it's very nice to see some of the improvements there. The thing that's so frustrating is to see some of the cities. I mean, when you've got some British Columbia municipalities doing well, and you've also in Quebec, there's been a strong tendency to do well. Ottawa is a late bloomer, but has recently been doing well. There's neighboring municipalities. There are municipalities that are just as complicated, or what I'd love to see is a couple of pairs of municipalities where there's a bit of rivalry, like Calgary and Edmonton, for example, Regina and Saskatoon. They ought to be saying, hey, we can do as well as our neighbor on this or that, timeliness, the clarity of the presentation, and so on. And everybody could be in that category if they just put their minds to it. It's not that hard.
So the class clown for 2024 coming in with a D. Toronto, Nick?
Yeah, Toronto came in near the bottom of the class this year. Right off the jump, their budget was late. It was released in February. This is a consequence of the strong mayor powers, which give the mayor the option to present a budget as late as February 1st. So not a great start. But they also have other problems. The PSAS numbers that they present in their budget, they reconcile their cash basis key numbers, capital and operating budgets into PSAS, but it's incomplete.
Hang on, we're going to need to define the term PSAS for those of us who aren't accountants.
Yes, so PSAS are public sector accounting standards. They adhere to accrual accounting, taking into consideration the full lifetime of long-lived assets like subways and buses and roads and bridges. Unfortunately,
so where does Toronto stand in actually taking advantage of the actual standards that exist within the industry? Are they following them?
Well, they are, but in their financial statements, their budgets omit certain items from that reconciliation that make someone who looks at the PSAS numbers they provide in their budget and the PSAS numbers they provide in their financial statements, they would leave them totally bewildered. They're wildly different. They're restated almost entirely in the financial statements, which makes it very, very hard to put together the story for the year.
What I might say about Toronto particularly, it's true of other cities as well, but it really stands out in Toronto's case, is that they do not show you in the budget what the numbers would look like if they were done the same way they're going to present them at the end of the year. And I guess it's human nature. People pay much more attention to budgets than they do to the financial statements. And so there aren't that many people who check Toronto's financial statements at the end of the fiscal year. But if they did, they'd be astonished to discover that Toronto routinely runs very large surpluses. $1.5 billion, some years recently close to $2 billion in surplus, which is a very healthy margin when you're talking about a sort of $15 billion budget. At budget time, nobody knows that. And so our giving Toronto a D is sort of a clinical representation of something that in real life plays out as a budget debate, where we're hearing we're going to have these stonking big property tax increases. The city is talking about all kinds of cuts to services and transfers that they provide, how there's going to be a squeeze on policing, how the transit system is going to be in trouble, and they can't afford things for housing and so on. And then you look at the end of the year and it just isn't so. So that D in the report card reflects a budgeting process that is just nowhere near what it should be. And it has real world consequences. I mean, when you tell Torontonians that the city actually runs big surpluses and that this annual budget thing is almost like a charade, it's certainly unnecessary, their jaws drop. They just don't know.
But I thought the reason why Toronto had such large budget surpluses is it was money that was locked away that couldn't be used because it was tied to things like developer fees and projects that would have that money earmarked for later use.
Yeah, the fact that cities budget on a cash basis does have bad effects, especially the one that you've just mentioned. Because when you're budgeting on a cash basis, capital outlays, and for new housing developments, you've got to have roads, you've got to have sewers, you've got to have water supply, all that. It does cost money, but the right way to cover that sort of a cost is over time. I mean, capital projects, it's not like a cup of coffee where you drink it and it's gone. Those things are going to be delivering their services for decades. And so it's only reasonable and fair to make sure that you're spreading the cost out over decades. When you budget on a cash basis, there's this imperative to spend, to grab all the money up front, even though, as you say, Michael, a lot of it's not going to get spent for a long time. And so that's part of the problem. The other thing that people don't get to do until the end of the year is they don't get to compare, as Nick was mentioning earlier, what the actuals were compared to the budget projections. And in the case of Toronto and many other cities, one of the reasons that you see these big surpluses is because they don't spend as much as they budget on other things as well. And it would be sensible if councillors at the beginning of the year were able to say, well, you said you were going to spend this much on policing, you said you were going to spend this much on snow removal, or whatever the case may be. And I mentioned snow removal because sometimes there's a good reason, right? You might have an unusually mild or tough winter, so there'd be a good explanation. But when you see that cities are routinely failing to spend what they budgeted in certain categories, that's a legitimate question to ask. Why? You know, did you not deliver the services you said you would? And at budget time, when you're looking forward, you'd say, well, why are you budgeting so much in this category when repeatedly in the past we haven't spent that much, and threatening us with property tax increases that maybe aren't necessary?
I want to move a little further afield from Toronto. You know, one who couldn't afford to buy a house in Toronto, it's often been said that with the housing market, you drive till you qualify for the mortgage, and many people find themselves in Hamilton. Nick, why did Hamilton get a failing grade?
Well, there's one big glaring reason that in this report, our 2024 report, that Hamilton received a failing grade. Their financial statements, even at the time of recording, are not available on the municipality's website. So we had nothing to grade for a big chunk of our criterion, which leaves them with a failing grade. But their budget isn't great either. They don't budget according to public sector accounting standards like Richmond does, and they don't provide a reconciliation, even a bad one, like Toronto does.
We are recording this podcast in late May of 2025, and the financial statements that we're talking about are for 2023. So that is just outrageous. There's no reason whatsoever for a city not to be able to publish its financial statements. Even a year later would be ridiculous. Some of the senior governments, Alberta, for example, publishes its financial statements 3 months after the end of its fiscal year, which is a terrific standard. We'd love to see that more widespread. If you're a publicly listed company, you have to release your financial statements as fast as that or faster. And I know that cities are complicated organizations, but the money that they're spending isn't their own money. I mean, it's somebody else's money. There's an element of accountability here. So we do grade timeliness fairly heavily in this report, both for budgets and for financial statements. And when a city hasn't released its financial statements more than a year, well, nearly a year and a half after the end of the fiscal year, that's a big fail.
So, Bill, after 14 years of grading municipalities on their fiscal accountability, what's the biggest lesson you've learned?
Well, it's very difficult to get people to change the way that they are operating in a bureaucratic environment where it seems persuasive to say, this is how we've always done it. This is how we present the numbers to council. This is what council expects, and therefore nothing can change. It's very difficult, I think, for somebody, even when you have kind of business-minded people for whom presenting a budget that matches what you did in the past seems so straightforward. Like, why on earth would you ever do it differently? It's very difficult for them to overcome that. And I think part of the difficulty is, and we often hear people say this, a counselor who's getting numbers that she or he doesn't understand does not want to say, I don't understand these numbers. You feel like there must be something wrong with you. And I think for a lot of ratepayers as well, there's a bit of the same feeling. If somebody from city staff tells you, oh, you just don't understand, then you feel, well, maybe I'm not smart enough, maybe I'm not expert enough. But the fact is, you could present these numbers as clearly as happens with many of the senior governments. And so what really we need is a few more counselors who would say, I don't understand the numbers you're giving me. Give me numbers I can understand. And after the initial resistance, you'd be getting a budget that would be just so much easier to understand. And instead of spending, for the counselors who do make the effort, and there are some, hours, literally hours, trying to sort out the numbers, and then just, you feel like you've done your job as soon as you can make two numbers match. Instead, right off the top, you'd be able to say, okay, this is up, this is down, this is the same, and why is that? So it's really overcoming that inertia. It's really a matter of the counselors and the ratepayers being willing to stand up and say, you're giving me numbers I don't understand, give me numbers I can understand, like Richmond does.
As a straight C student, what do I, who didn't really take accounting in high school, need to know about the importance of this fiscal accountability scorecard?
When people look at a city budget and they don't understand it, one of the most important messages we have for them is, it's not you, it's them. You should be able to understand it, and they should give you something you can understand.
For us to be able to hold them to account, we need to understand the numbers. And for them to make informed decisions that benefit all of us, they need to understand the numbers.
And there is no reason why the cities in Canada, like the other levels of government, can't present numbers that a non-accountant can understand and understand whether their government's in good fiscal shape, whether taxes are going up, whether spending is going up. It should be as simple as that, and there's no reason it can't be.
Bill Robson is the president and CEO of the C.D. Howe Institute. Nicholas Dahir is an Institute research officer. Their complete report, Could Do Better, Grading the Fiscal Accountability of Canada's Municipalities in 2024, can be found at cdhowe.org. I'm Michael Hainsworth. Thanks for joining us.
You've been listening to the C.D. Howe Institute podcast with Michael Hainsworth. Subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. The C.D. Howe Institute is an independent, not-for-profit research institute whose mission is to raise living standards by fostering economically sound public policies. The Institute is widely considered to be Canada's most influential think tank and a trusted source of essential policy intelligence, distinguished by nonpartisan, evidence-based research and subject to definitive expert review. Visit cdhowe.org and follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. Thank you.